Well, I have a confession to make. They kicked me out of the dormitories at St. Edward's University when I was going to school there. Please don't tell my mom; she doesn't know yet. But they kicked me out. Allegedly, they heard some hysterical giggling of a female coming from the general vicinity of my dorm room. About 2 or 3 in the morning, one Sunday morning, and you know, I'm a victim of circumstance, clearly. But when the RA came several times and asked that I open the door, and I didn't do it right away. Anyway, I tried to explain all this to Brother John Perrin that I was innocent, but he didn't buy it, and he kicked me out. And so I had to move down the street. They didn't kick me out of school, but they kicked me out of the dorms because it was against the rules to have girls in your room, and which I didn't, of course, but they say I did. So I moved down the street to a friend of mine's apartment. His name was Ken. And Ken had this really cool, it's kind of like a townhome, and he lived there all by himself. And when he found out what had happened, he said, "Sure, come on, I got an extra bedroom, come stay with me." And he had a cool car and a cool house, and me and Ken got along great. And he had this girlfriend, and her name was Susan. And Susan was one of these sort of rough and tumble girls that, Daddy always used to say, you have the dating kind and you have the marrying kind. Well, Susan was the former. She was more of the dating kind, and Susan was hanging around our house pretty regular, and that was all great until one day, Ken told me that he had met this really nice girl. Her name was Laura, and Laura was much more the kind you marry. She was beautiful. Ken was head over heels about her, and so he started sort of quietly seeing Laura. He didn't feel that he had any real commitment to Susan. And so he started seeing Laura every now and then. And he'd get all dressed up and look real nice. And I think he was really pretty serious about her. And so that went on for a while. I would see Susan at our house, and every once in a while, he'd bring Laura by, but most of the time Laura wasn't seen around our house. So this one day, pretty late, it was about 6 or 7 in the evening, and the sun was just going down, or had already gone down, and I was cruising up to the house when I saw Susan's car at the house. And I happened to notice that Susan was climbing around in the flower bed of our house, looking in the dining room window. And I stopped in the middle of the street because this was a weird scene. And all of a sudden I started seeing her banging on that window and screaming and hollering. And so I just stopped my car back, a few yards away from the house and just watched this scene unfold. And what had happened was Ken thought that Susan was out of town, so he decided to invite Laura over for a nice candlelit dinner. And that's what was happening inside. And Susan crept up to the window and saw this taking place and completely flipped out. Okay, and she was banging on that window and screaming and hollering, and all of a sudden Ken comes out, and trying to calm her down, and it was just it was a horrible, loud scene, and as I looked around from the safety of my vehicle, I could see, sort of porch lights going on, some of our neighbors wandering out. There's this arguments going on, and Susan storms over. She's driving a GTO, you know, which is a really fast, powerful car. And she gets in it, and Ken's over there trying to explain, hey, baby, we're just friends, you know, it's no big deal. And she wasn't buying it, you know, because Susan had a lot more invested in the relationship, clearly, than Ken did. And she was upset. And what do they say? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. All right? This was a perfect example of that. She starts up that GTO in the driveway. Ken is sitting there talking to her at the window. Honey, look, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't know what he's saying to her. But all of a sudden, I believe she thought that she had dropped that car into reverse and was attempting to back out of the driveway really, really fast. Instead, she dropped it all the way down into drive and hit that gas pedal and almost ran over Ken's feet as she just rocketed into the little stone pillar in between the two garage doors. Both the garage doors of the house were down, and there's a little stone column in between them. She squarely hit that thing and went just right through it, and just boom! And there was smoke, and just those garage doors just flapped like a little moth's wings, you know, as they were falling off of their runners, and that column just broke into a million pieces, and cement and stones and, you know, glass and from the car and everything. The windows of the garage just shattered, and it was a huge explosion. Then all of a sudden, all the neighbors are out, okay? And and there's just dead silence inside the garage. Ken has jumped back, and he's laying back in the yard with his eyes up real big, and that car, the motor's still running. But it's you know, stuck inside. All you can see is the taillights sticking out of the garage, what's left of the garage. And there was a motorcycle and a bunch of other tools and stuff in that garage, now all trashed. And Ken gets up, he kind of gets himself together. He's like, Susan, are you all right? Are you okay in there? And there's nothing but silence. All you could hear is that motor just, and he's like, Susan, honey. And he starts to creep into the garage just a little bit, when all of a sudden you see those reverse lights come on, and that motor revs up, and she just comes flying back out of that garage with smoke. You know, those wheels are just burning rubber out of there. You know, there's rocks and stuff are flying off of her hood, and she just screams back into the street and drops it into drive. And now the motor's not sounding so good. It's not a smooth kind of race car motor like it was. It's more of a, you know, and just loud, and you can hear it in smoke and it just all the way up over the hill and out, and, you know, into the distance. You can just hear that motor, and Ken and then now by this time, of course, Laura's standing out at the, you know, the doorway, and the neighbors are all looking around, and I'm just sitting in my car just like going, oh my God. And so the neighbors come out, and somebody's called 911, and so it wasn't too long before the police came, and they had parked their car, you know, on by the curb, and they're talking to Ken, and the neighbors are all cluttered around. There's this, you know, big black burnout mark from the tires where she's burned all the way down the road, and everybody's just sort of milling around in the street going, gosh, you know, what is wrong with that woman? When all of a sudden, in the distance, you can hear that motor coming. It's like, and Ken looks up from talking to the police officers, and by this time, by the way, Laura has gotten in her car and split, never to be seen again. Okay, probably. I don't know if Ken ever saw her again. but that sound is now coming, brr, brr, and he, right at the crest of the hill up above our house, you can see that GTO. It's all smashed in, the headlights hanging off of the side. Looks like the face of a beat up boxer or something. And Ken runs out in the street. He goes, "Get out of the road! She'll kill you!" and man, all of a sudden the neighbors just, they're out of there, and she comes cruising up, and kind of slows down. She sees the police there, and you can see her eyes looking, and she just hits the gas, just takes off, and the police get in their car and take off after her, and that's the last I saw of it. And apparently they caught her, and she got a DWI, and it was really, really ugly. And so the moral of this story is, clean up one mess before you go making another one. It's not, I don't care what you think about whoever you're dating or whatever you're doing. It's nice to tell people what's going on, because sometimes they don't react so good. Be careful.